There was a dispersal of languages so that people who originally all spoke the same language, after a few generations, couldn't understand each other anymore. It is perfectly possible that invaders adopted a number of practices that they found here. They may have been Dravidian speaking or anything else, yet their parting of the hair, their namaste and so on were taken over by the invaders. They knew from the beginning that half or so of the people concerned are white and half or so are brown. So clearly, a linguistic conversion must have happened. Either originally brown people spoke Proto-Indo-European, and then they spread their language to white populations, or the reverse. But at any rate, half of the people concerned remained the same race but changed language.
The historical range of Indo-European languages covers a vast area from Northwestern China to Iceland, from Russia to the Maldives. Of course, we also have English, Spanish and Portuguese in the Americas today. All of these languages exhibit basic similarities in the form of basic vocabulary, pronunciation as well as grammar. There are extant as well as extinct languages. These languages are clustered into the following subgroups: Anatolian, Tokharian, Indo-Iranian, Germanic, Balto-Slavic, Armenian, Albanian, Italic, Celtic and Hellenic. These are the living groups. There are also extinct groups, by the way. There are also some unknown or poorly understood languages like Lusitanian or Dacian. Within the Indo-European speaking area, there are scripts that are yet to be undeciphered, like Linear A in Greece or Harappan in India. So, Dr. Elst, welcome to India, and can you just give us a brief history of Indo-European linguistics? What are the fundamental questions that the field of Indo-European studies, particularly linguistics, seeks to answer?
Yes, thanks for having me. Kinship between the North Indian, the Iranian, and most of the European languages starts in the 16th century with some very few researchers or even non-researchers like European traders who visited the coast of India and got to know a little bit of Konkani or Gujarati, and themselves didn't know Greek or so, knew only their own native Italian or whatever language. They did notice some strange similarities that were more suggestive of kinship than the far better known languages like Arabic, like for Spanish or French people, the Basque language, which is non-Indo-European, or Turkish or so. They were far more familiar to Europeans at that time, yet they clearly were very different. Whereas, for instance, French and Spanish or so were very obviously related, were ultimately dialects of the same language, Latin. So that was noticed without much thought attached to it. But gradually, a handful of scholars worked on it in the 18th century, and the probably decisive event here is the paper sent by the French Jesuit missionary in India, Gaston-Laurent Coeurdoux. He sent his paper to the Academy in Paris in 1767. And one of the first people to read it was Voltaire, the famous French freethinker. He had some healthy skepticism, let's say. Like, this is one of the first instances of etymology, of looking for the origin of words. So he said jocularly, well, etymology is a science where consonants count for little and vowels for nothing, because they change so drastically between different languages. But nevertheless, it's he more than anyone else who made this new finding well known. You see, Gaston-Laurent Coeurdoux had compared Sanskrit with Latin and Greek, which literate Europeans would know, and so not yet with Russian and Gothic and so on, but already he gave the essential message that European languages are cognate with the North Indian languages, and immediately something happened which would characterize the study of the Indo-European languages for the next 2 centuries, namely ideological use. You see, what made the whole finding so welcome to Voltaire is that in his personal crusade against the Catholic Church, he found this Indo-European a very useful idea, because it showed that the Bible and the Holy Land and so on were not that important for European identity, and that India suddenly became very important. And indeed, you see, as he put it, the cradle of European culture is on the banks of the Ganga. So that was the out of India theory, already in about 1770. The out of India theory was not, and I quote, concocted by the ugly, vicious Hindu nationalists in the 20th century. It dates back to the very beginning of Indo-European studies, and it was situated among the best and progressive European intellectuals.
Okay.
So,
I mean, but maybe history is full of irony. So I would
yeah.
say that Voltaire made ideological use of this kinship against Christianity.
Yes.
But I think the Bible has something to contribute in the story of the Tower of Babel,
Yes.
which essentially says that everyone spoke one language and then dispersed in different languages because of mutually unintelligible dialects.
Yes.
So, in other words, the Bible story reflects what we now know about linguistic dispersal.
I agree. Of course, there are very good elements in the Bible.
Yeah.
And there, of course, this is the older part of the Bible, contains a lot of borrowings from Mesopotamian mythology. And so the Tower of Babel story indeed reflects a reality. So linguists have tried to trace back the multiplicity of languages to first some families, and then beyond that, like there are certain families like Indo-European, Uralic, Trans-Eurasian, and so on, that already have been grouped to an earlier family. You see, those families are from like 5,000, 8,000 years ago. Earlier families might be 10,000 more years in the past. And ultimately, those can probably be connected. So there are some 40 word roots that are present in practically all languages in the world, like the word for finger, dick or something like that, that you find in digitus, where from digital, a word currently much in use. That can be found in very many, not just languages, language groups from Africa to China. So it is very logical, very plausible that at one time, when Homo sapiens started with a few thousand people maybe, that they all spoke the same language, and that then that language has disintegrated the more that they spread. So that's not really revolutionary, but yes, I mean, there the Bible really has a point. So yes, there was a dispersal of languages so that people who originally all spoke the same language, after a few generations, couldn't understand each other anymore.
Yes. And even with the out of Africa theory,
Yes.
we find that there is mention of this population bottleneck, where the total number of modern human beings came down to perhaps a few thousand individuals or so.
Yes.
So that is entirely possible that they spoke at least mutually intelligible dialects, if not the same language, right? So, as an aside, could you give us a brief background to your own involvement in this Indo-European language issue?
I, of course, followed courses in Indo-European linguistics as part of my university training. So, I don't know, I just rolled into it. I remember in my very first course about this subject, my professor said quite explicitly that the country of origin is a little bit controversial, but is very likely in Eastern Europe, partly Central Asia, and that unfortunately linguistics is not able to prove that, but that the proof has been given by archaeology. So what he referred to at the time was the finding of B.B. Lal, most famous, I think, Indian archaeologist, who had shown in the 50s, when he was an assistant of Mortimer Wheeler, head of the Archaeological Survey of India, he had explored the painted grayware, which he thought was the material point of recognition of the Aryans moving deeper into India. So it's not really the Vedic Aryans, but the next wave of Mahabharata, Ramayana. And so he did digging at the Mahabharata sites like Hastinapura, Meerut nowadays, and or Indraprastha in present-day Delhi. So he identified those two, and so painted grayware like 1000 BC. And so he thought, you see, this, the Vedas must be a little bit earlier, and so these are the, Vedic people, but on their way deeper into India. That was, of course, fitting into the Aryan Invasion theory, which is, of course, what Mortimer Wheeler believed, and his assistants, including his Indian assistants. Like, for instance, there is a famous phrase by Mortimer Wheeler that Indra stands accused. So Indra is the storm god, and therefrom also the war god of the supposedly invading Aryans. And so it is said about him that he destroyed the forts of supposedly the indigenous people. And so that this, signifies the violent invasion of the Aryans coming into India, destroying the native society. But you see, that phrase, Indra stands accused, actually comes from V.S. Agarwal, another assistant of his. He was a very nationalist Indian archaeologist. So, I mean, once you get into that Aryan invasion paradigm, then those things naturally follow. Also, for Indians who do this practice. So, the same with B.B. Lal. He fitted, or shall I say, force-fitted his findings into the Aryan invasion paradigm. That was taken by non-archaeologists as an archaeological proof of the Aryan invasion. Now, as he went older and more experienced, he himself saw that actually this is not a proof of the Aryan invasion. This is an accommodation of the Aryan invasion paradigm. So it proves nothing, and it may well fit another paradigm. And that's what he ultimately decided for. So he became, I think, 101 or 102. So the last 30 years of his life, because he kept working till the end, he published several books attacking the Aryan Invasion paradigm and defending the out of India paradigm.
One of which is the Saraswati flows on.
Yes. Yes, exactly, wherein he shows that many Vedic themes or many Hindu practices still today already existed in the archaeology of the Indus cities.
Yes, I mean, I remember photographs from that book wherein he shows little terracotta statuettes doing namaste.
Yes.
And also this red color in the parting of the hair of
Right.
women.
Sindoor. Yes.
So sindoor as seen in parting of the hair. So he said that all these practices have remarkable continuity and there is no indication of any break,
Yes.
cultural break.
Yeah, the priest king even physically resembles Narendra Modi more than anything.
As most of his fans now aware.
Yes.
Yes, but
Yeah, true. But to that, of course, there's an answer given by, for example, David Mino, who's a skeptic who, tries to debunk a lot of, heady or funny theories about
Speculations.
Atlantis and Lemuria and so on. So he says, well, you see, you shouldn't see too much in it. It is perfectly possible that invaders adopted a number of practices that they found here. And so they may have been Dravidian speaking or anything else, yet their parting of the hair, their namaste and so on were taken over by the invaders. Those are things that happen. So it's an indication, but it's not proof. And indeed, that's a general remark I want to second, which is that the word proof or evidence is used far too easily, especially in India. In all these polemics about the homeland question, this is all this disproves the Aryan invasion. Well, I mean, I also think that the Aryan invasion is incorrect, but I wouldn't hurry to say, oh, it's proven. So different explanations are possible.
yes. And regarding the invaders assimilating, I mean, we have a great example in the Mongol Empire. Because though they conquered all those areas, ultimately the Mongols converted to the religions in those respective areas.
Exactly.
And most of them gave up Tengrism, right?
Yeah.
Even though their military success was unqualified, there are no two ways about it. So, yes, there are many ways this thing can go. Good?
Yes, well, since you give that example, the Mongols conquered a lot of space, but they hardly left their language anywhere. Even though genetically they left a lot. It is estimated that, 40 million people in Asia are direct biological descendants of Genghis Khan himself. Nevertheless, their language is gone. I mean, except in Mongolia, but you see, in in China they became Chinese. In Iran they became Persian. In Russia they became Russian. I mean, there you see very clearly how different linguistic effects are from genetic effects.
Yes.
Which is a very important thing to keep in mind nowadays. Now that genetics is indeed adding a lot to our knowledge, yet you cannot draw the conclusion that whenever the genetics of a population changes, it must be a change in languages at the same time.
Correct. And I may point out that though both of us are conversing in English, neither of us happen to be genetically Englishmen.
Right.
So, anyway, so to get back to this thing, can you tell us which was the first language family to be recognized and classified? I think it was Uralic, right?
To my knowledge, it was Uralic indeed. And so there, also against a very common saying in India, it had nothing to do with race. You see, Indians, or many of them at least, think they are very pertinent, very original when they say, you see, Aryan had nothing to do with race. Yeah, but you see, the whole topic of language kinship has nothing per se to do with race. And so, you see, a very important creative period was in the late 19th century, which also happened to be the heyday of race theories. But this linguistic comparison had started earlier. So in the 17th century already, you get an awareness of the Uralic kinship, which is something because today Finnish and Hungarian, which are the two most prominent members, are mutually not understandable. And indeed, you could learn both these languages and not notice that they're related. And so that was already discovered at the time. And practically the whole family with many obscure languages in what was then the Russian Empire were mapped. And so, there was very good linguistic research being done that is valid till today, without race playing any role at all. Because all the people concerned and all the researchers concerned were white. And they didn't think of it. And so with Indo-European, that becomes more interesting. But still, in the beginning, the concept of race was not used, was not deemed relevant, even though from the beginning, different races were involved. You see, they knew from the beginning that half or so of the people concerned are white and half or so are brown. So clearly, a linguistic conversion must have happened. Either originally brown people spoke Proto-Indo-European, and then they spread their language to white populations, or the reverse. But at any rate, half of the people concerned remained the same race but changed language. So that's, not controversial to say. That was known since the beginning. So temporarily, the popularity of the race concept, obscured that evident fact. But so that has been corrected. And so sometimes, Indians make far too much of it. They say, Aryan does not mean a race. Well, nobody says that Aryan is a race. You see, 100 years ago, yes. But, things change. And so Max Mueller, another bogeyman for the Indian public, he is the one who reacted against this racial misuse of the Indo-European concept. He himself said that when I say Aryan, which was by then the common popular term for Indo-European, he said, when I say Aryan, what I mean is speakers of Indo-European languages. Like, for instance, a black Jamaican is, by this definition, an Aryan, because he's a speaker of English. Yes. Or a French Jew, who, of course, notoriously in Hitler's time will become a non-Aryan. He is an Aryan. Or, you see, most of the victims of the Holocaust were Yiddish speaking, which is the Jewish dialect of German. So that's like Aryan par excellence. So he was right. And he was also a big name. Like, for instance, his own personal estimate that this famous invasion and the immediately ensuing composition of the Vedas took place in the middle of the second millennium BC, that, even though it was not supported by any evidence, and he ultimately also conceded that it was a wild guess not based on evidence, that was taken over by everyone because he was a really big name.
Mm-hmm.
You see, he was the editor of the sacred books of the East.
Yes.
And that was a bit of a revolution. You see, in the 16th century in Europe, you had the Renaissance, the Elizabethan period, when Greek and Hebrew were discovered or rediscovered. And you see, philology became a very big thing. All kinds of texts were being researched, and new insights based on that were found. And so a similar thing has happened in the 19th century, thanks to Max Muller's work, and other people also. But so he was the figurehead of this movement. So all the fabled, wisdom of the Orient became available to all the philosophers and artists and so on in the West.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, he was a very big name. Nobody except for the main specialists dared to question him. So when he said 1500 BC, everybody followed 1500 BC. It's only a few specialists, you see, colleagues of his, especially his own ex-pupil, Moritz Winternitz, who pointed out that this is not based on anything.
Mm-hmm.
And indeed, it's not a very realistic date, because it means all the evolution in language and in thought from the earliest Vedas down to, let's say, Buddhism, which was already fairly well known at the time. You can't cram that together in a few centuries. It needs more time. So the Vedas were earlier, like 3rd millennium BC. And so that is entirely valid. That objection has never been refuted, never been neutralized. So in that respect, nevertheless, his authority has effect till today. Now, by contrast, he also very authoritatively said, as a specialist of Indo-European languages, I say this cannot be identified with a race. And yet, he lost. The racial interpretation won through. Because the racial idea at the time was so strong. Like, for instance, Benjamin Disraeli, who was the Prime Minister of Britain.
Yes.
He was at that time the most powerful man in the world.
Mm-hmm.
He said, everything in history can be explained by race. If there's a new cultural trend, if there are new inventions, whatever, it means that a new type of human being has entered the scene. So what could even Max Mueller do against that?
Yes.
It's also because of a certain ideological background. It has to do with modernization. In fact, it has to do with the Enlightenment. You see, if you don't explain things through religion, through supernatural categories, you try to reduce everything to material factors, then you have to say, well, man is what he is because of his material being. And then material characteristics like skin color become important. You see, to let's say, for example, to the first Christians, race was not important.
Never.
Like the Ethiopians were among the first Christians.
Yes.
They were black, they depicted Christ as black,
Mm-hmm.
which is historically not so accurate, but it's theologically totally correct. You see, the central idea of Christianity is the incarnation of God in a human being. And so that means, you see, God has become us. Therefore, any group is at liberty to depict God or the incarnation of God as one of his own group. Yeah. So, you see, their race is not so important. And it becomes important when religion diminishes in importance. So it looked like a very progressive idea. And so that's why things like, for instance, eugenics, trying to select men to, uplift,
Francis Galton.
Yeah, yes. The quality of human beings, that was a leftist idea. It was very popular among socialists. So one of the main pioneering countries was the progressive country par excellence, Sweden, or the United States. So, the spirit of the times was rather in favor of racism.
Yes, and I may add as a biologist that the theory of evolution of Darwin was making waves just then.
Oh, yes.
At the second half of the 19th century.
Yes.
And so that is why we have the term social Darwinism, where you have the struggle for existence and the survival of the fittest. So that is where it went.
Right. Now, because of the defeat of Nazi Germany, this idea went out of fashion. And of course, in our training in Indo-European linguistics, it was pressed upon us that language is a different thing from race, or what they now call genetics. Yet in the debates about any big news in the homeland debate, as it is reported in India, you see, the same ideas are there all the time. The Aryan gene, like some corpse found in Rakhigarhi was genetically analyzed, and so it was reported that he must have been a Dravidian, because of the genetics.
How do we know?
Yeah.
I mean,
so you see, this type of thinking resurfaces at the moment, and so I have my doubts about it.
Yes, and I think we can award Max Mueller the ultimate prize for a failed retraction, because he had 2 failed retractions, not 1. Normally, when you retract a paper from a journal, it means that you have basically ruined the field if it's been cited so many times. And in spite of his retraction, one, he said that calling an Aryan race is like calling a dolichocephalic grammar or something to that effect.
Yes, exactly.
Which is not possible. And then he also said that we may never be able to find out the timeline of the Vedas. And these 2 things basically count as retractions.
Yes.
But they have never been counted in the overall scheme of things. And today most textbooks say 1500 BC. That's it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, very interesting.